Hello, and thank you very much for joining me for another episode of You Would Think. Short background for any new viewers. We are talking about the Lindsay Clancy trial. Lindsay Clancy is the Massachusetts mother who strangled her 3 children and then jumped out of her second-story bedroom window 20 feet down and paralyzed herself. She stipulated to the fact that she committed the crime. The defense has stipulated that she committed the crime. This is not a whodunit. This is what state of mind was she in at that time. And the defense's argument is that she was suffering from a postpartum psychosis. So, full disclosure, I'm not an attorney. I do not have a law degree. My degree is in forensics and crime scene technology. True crime and trials have always been a bit of a hobby, so I thought that I would make a channel where I can talk to other people like me and we can discuss different things and I can hear things from a different perspective. So, all right, so please do me a favor and like and subscribe so I can bring you more content. And let's jump right in. Okay, day 14. We saw one more witness for the prosecution, which was a Celebrite digital forensics witness. His name was Ian Whiffen, and he was able to look at some of the data from Lindsay's Apple Watch, including health data and things like that. He testified that his main focus of the forensic evidence from the Apple Watch was pretty much from the beginning of January till this tragedy occurred on January 24th of 2023. And then a page was admitted and from his report that showed some evidence regarding like different times that her heart rate was different, and when you look at it, it doesn't really fluctuate very much. So I'm not really sure what their point was with this witness, but as we well know by now, the prosecution is making it a point of theirs to put on witnesses that can't really offer anything, It's my personal opinion.
Did you focus in on a particular time frame when looking at the data on the defendant's iPhone?
Primarily, I knew that the date of the incident was 24th of January 2023, so that was the main focus of my analysis. But some of the data I was aware could be from further afield than that, so I took a look of, I think it was around 3 weeks before that, so early January to late January.
Were you able to look at the health data on January 24th, 2023 that was in the defendant's phone extraction?
I was, yes.
And what is health data? And how does it show up on a phone?
The user of the phone would be able to access the health data via the health application, where the information is broken down to explain how many steps have been taken over a particular period of time, the approximate distance that was travelled, the number of stair flights that were climbed. That data is stored on the device itself in a database. So as a forensic examiner, I can take a look at that database in its raw form, and understand exactly where that information is coming from, and present it to the user of our forensic tools in a slightly more forensic-friendly method than the user of the application on the phone would see.
Showing you on the screen here, page 4 of your report. Looking here, we have a section here, heart rate data, is that correct?
Correct.
And you're able to see here, what can you tell about the heart rate data from the extraction?
So heart rate data comes from wearing an Apple Watch or a similar device, not from the phone itself. In the case of this phone, there was an Apple Watch paired to the device, and all of the heart rate data, which is recorded periodically throughout the day, is stored within the health database.
And what was the name associated with the Apple Watch?
So as it says in the third paragraph down, the Apple Watch itself was called Lindsay's Apple Watch.
And here in the report, you're able to show the recorded heart rates throughout the day. How is the heart rate recorded and sent to the phone?
There are sensors on the Apple Watch itself on the rear, which periodically check the heart rate at any given time, and that information is sent to the phone via Bluetooth.
It really did not help progress the case any. But again, that seems to be the prosecution's MO. So, after the state rested, then it was time for the defense to put on their case in chief. And one of the first things that Kevin Reddington did, which is done in, I believe, I think almost all the cases, when the prosecution rests their case, the defense will get up and they will argue a motion in front of the judge for a dismissal, saying that the prosecution did not rise to the level that it needed to in order to charge her with what they are charging her with. He said the evidence shows overwhelmingly that the defendant was suffering from a mental disease or defect. He also suggested, if not a dismissal, maybe then the charges could be pled down to second-degree murder or manslaughter. The prosecution then got up and argued that a finding of not guilty due to lack of criminal responsibility should be found after all the evidence is heard, not in the middle of the case. And ultimately, the judge denies this motion, and we continue on. Kevin Reddington's first witness was a labor and delivery nurse who worked with Lindsay. And she, in her opinion, said Lindsay loved being a nurse and that she was very emotional after delivering the babies because she said it was just such a beautiful thing. And she said that Lindsay asked a lot of questions of her coworkers for parenting tips or caregiving tips, essentially trying to be the best mother that she could be. At one point, she said that because you remember when Lindsay worked at the labor and delivery hospital, they worked the night shift. So Lindsay had one of those things on her phone where you can see, your baby in the crib while you're not there. And this incident that she's referring to was when Cora was about 6 months old. And while she's looking, checking in on her, Cora had been crying, and she kept crying and kept crying. So Lindsay, she called Patrick. Patrick didn't answer the phone. So she began to get extremely anxious, and she actually called the police and to do a wellness check. So let's watch just a little bit of that.
Looking or monitoring one of the children, and the child was crying and You observed what happened after that?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Lindsay often checked in on her kids while they were sleeping at night. Again, we worked the night shift, and she had the ability to look at her phone and see what Cora or Callan were doing in their cribs, and she shared that with a lot of us. There was one particular night that Cora was crying. She was probably about 6 months old, and Lindsay never let Cora cry. She wasn't at that point in parenting, and she was very communicative about that. And Cora was crying on the monitor. It was the middle of the night, and maybe after 10 minutes, she started to call Pat, and he wasn't answering. And she got really worried that Cora was crying, but now Pat wasn't answering his phone. So in the middle of the night, she called the police to do a wellness check on her family.
Okay.
And the prosecution stated that pretty much that this witness had no idea what was going on after Callan was born, because, you know, her and Lindsay never communicated very much at that point. And she never saw any of this behavior. They never communicated or text back and forth about any of this behavior. So she really had no way of knowing how Lindsay was between October 2022 and January 24th of 2023. Next, we have Allison Ozga, who is Lindsay's sister. And she says that she was asked if there was anything during Thanksgiving of 2022 that she noticed that was out of the ordinary. She said that she did notice, her mood was different. She just didn't really look very good, and her energy was off. Then we backtrack to December of 2022. Actually, I apologize. We're not going back, we're going forward. So forward to December 2022, the sister says that Lindsay told her, "I'm in a really tough spot." And then around Christmas, she said that she was not doing okay. Lindsay told her sister about the doctors that she was seeing in October and the fact that she was given Zoloft. And she had told her that she had had a terrible reaction to the Zoloft.
Tell us what you observed about her around the holiday season as it related to her, from your observations and your texting and your communications with Lindsay. How did she appear to you at that point?
The beginning of December, it seemed like she very much decompensated. I do remember her saying at one point at the beginning of December, something along the lines of, "I'm in a really tough spot." And knowing what she had shared with me previously about how her mental health had been struggling, I had this gut feeling that something was off and that she was really struggling, and I asked her if she was safe.
What did she say?
She said yes at that point.
And you knew her husband, Pat?
Yes.
And you knew the kids?
Yes.
Obviously. Do you recall around Christmas itself, and perhaps a little bit thereafter, that you spoke with her and that she indicated, basically, "I'm not doing okay"?
Yes.
Can you tell the jury what you observed about her demeanor or her symptomology when you said she was decompensating around that time? What were they symptoms in your mind of?
Based on communication with Lindsay, and I started communicating with Pat directly at that time, she was reporting her mood was worsening, as she described as depression. She was having more thoughts. Insomnia continued to be an issue. She was really not feeling like herself.
And did you know that during that period of time where she was telling you about the and the issue of depression, that she was seeing doctors?
Yes.
And what did she tell you about seeing the doctors, and if she was on any medication, and if so, what effect did they have on her?
The first thing she said about the doctors was back in October when she said that she saw a doctor for Zoloft and had a very awful reaction to that Zoloft.
Would that be Dr. Tufts?
I don't believe she shared that specific with me.
Share the name? Okay.
No. And then I think throughout our communication over the couple months of October to December, she did share with me that she was going to doctors, she was getting different prescriptions, kind of all the things that they were trying and different treatments they were looking at.
So next up, we have Lindsay's mother, Paula Musgrove. She was asked a series of questions that elicited from her that in October of 2022, she was very worried about Lindsay. And she knew that Lindsay was worried about going back to work because Callan apparently wasn't taking his bottle very well, and she felt very, very guilty for leaving him. And that caused a lot of anxiety in her as well. She also shared that, yes, she was depressed. She had some, serious radiation at that point, and she was extremely anxious. These things were stated to her mother on October 20th in a text message. The text to mom was shown, admitted into evidence, and then it was shown on the screen for a brief moment, but Kevin Reddington, being the thoughtful man that he is, decided to put that one text on a demonstrative, like a cardboard, a demonstrative. You could show the jury, just it's easier to read. But for whatever reason, the judge did not allow him to use that.
So I'm going to approach you with this board and ask if this is a copy of the text that you're referring to.
Yes, it is.
Would you read that for the jury?
Mom, will you please come up and stay with me for a bit? I'm really sick. Something is wrong. I had horrible insomnia all night, and I just don't know how I'm going to get through the day. I started taking the medicine my doctor prescribed for anxiety, and I think it's made things worse. It's just really scary, and I don't want to be alone.
You want to write off this?
Objection. It's already in evidence.
What do we mark it for identification? Is that text within the?
I'd rather have
thrust?
it in the board.
Well, I know you would, but we already have the.
They want a little training. Can I just offer the board
No, we're going to mark that for identification. The text that is been referred and read to is within Exhibit 276, which was just offered.
I'm sorry, which is what?
I think it was within Exhibit 276, which was within that thread that you just offered.
Okay, so.
Regardless, the text was admitted into evidence and shown. And mom's own opinion between November and December of 2022 was that she was not getting better. And there was an incident that occurred that disturbed her greatly. One time when she was staying with Lindsay, Lindsay asked if she could sleep in the bed with her mom because she was afraid to be alone. And that concerned her mother very much. Then, between January and January 24th, mom observed her losing weight, being paranoid about strange things, and made a comment that she said Lindsay made a comment to her saying, "This is not my mind." She also stopped driving, which I thought was an interesting little fact. And going back to December of 2022, Lindsay made a statement to Pat and her mother. Her mother overheard it. She said, "I'm having thoughts of hurting the children."
the end of January that she made a statement to you about the medication, in her opinion, what it was doing to her mind.
Yes.
What did she say?
She said that she couldn't remember anything. The medication was pretty much just destroying her mind, and it wasn't her. She said, this isn't me. I just want to feel better and enjoy my kids again.
Now, I know that this is difficult. In December of 2022, do you recall the time that you were in the kitchen with Lindsay and Patrick, and she made a statement about her state of mind to her husband, Pat, and you were there?
Yes.
I know it's difficult. Just tell us what you remember.
I remember her being very nervous. I remember her saying, I just have to tell you guys something. And then she told us.
What did she tell you?
She told us that she had thoughts of harming the children.
Thank you very much.
So it's pretty disturbing. And then the last witness of the day was an ER doctor who is completely neutral. He did not treat Lindsay. He had nothing to do with Lindsay's care. Kevin Reddington simply called him as an expert in ER medicine and gave him a bunch of records to review, including the documentation from the hospital and crime scene photos, etc. And he mentioned that her GCS, which is the Glasgow test, which kind of, it gauges how responsive you are. And given this test, Lindsay scored a 10, which meant that she was not responsive and she was not speaking intelligently. And he said that they had to incubate her, which we knew, and confirmed that she was hypothermic and that her body temperature was 82.1 degrees. And then something that I thought was very interesting, considering Kevin Reddington has been trying to fight the superficial wounds fight for like this entire trial. And then his own expert gets on the stand and literally says that the lacerations to her wrist were superficial. But he did get him to agree that the wound on her neck was similar to other people that he had seen who had, unalived themselves by cutting their throat.
To the Social Hospital.
So there were multiple injuries. She had lacerations to bilateral wrists.
When you say lateral, what does that mean?
Bilateral, both sides. So she had a laceration both to her left wrist and to her right wrist, and then multiple superficial lacerations as well. And then she also had multiple superficial lacerations to both sides of her neck, the front of her neck, and 2 deeper lacerations to the sides of her neck.
So when you say superficial lacerations and then deeper lacerations, do you recall, what's the standard? What do you look for in something like that?
So it's tough. Everybody will describe them a little bit differently. In her case, I would describe multiple superficial lacerations, which would typically mean kind of scrapes on the surface of the skin, nothing that actually gets through the full thickness of the skin. And then she also had full thickness lacerations, meaning that she made it all the way through the skin into the subcutaneous tissue, the fatty tissue. And then you would need to describe it further if any additional structures were injured, which in her case they were not.
Now, in your experience for a number of years in the emergency room, have you had occasion to treat people that have tried to commit suicide or successfully committed suicide by cutting their throat?
Multiple times.
Multiple times. And can you tell us, in your opinion, to a reasonable degree of medical certainty, sir, as to whether or not this injury or these injuries that you observe were consistent with what you've seen in other attempts?
Sustained.
Well, can you tell us, did that look like an effort to pretend or fake a suicide?
Sustained.
Well, when you looked at the injuries, did you make a determination that they appeared to have some impact on the human body of Ms. Clancy?
Yes.
What was that?
They were consistent with self-injurious behavior. The intent, I can't gauge, but
Anything further?
Okay.
Next question.
Yep, thank you. How about the wrist? What did you observe about the wrist injuries, sir?
so she had 2 full-thickness lacerations, one on the left and one on the right.
What does that mean?
Means that she made it all the way through the epidermis and the dermis, which is what makes up the skin in the wrist, and into the fatty tissue, which is the next layer.
Okay. Are you familiar in your experience, sir, with hesitation wounds in a suicide?
Yes, to some extent.
What does that mean?
Means typically that they're more kind of subtle, weaker attempts to hurt yourself, not necessarily anything that's going to be deep to the structures of the skin, but more just scrapes along the surface.
Okay, and you noticed some of those on the neck area as well, is that correct?
There were multiple of those on both the neck and the wrists.
And the fact that she was mediflighted, to Boston Hospital, which usually indicates a more serious problem if somebody is like metaflown, or I'm not sure how you say that. And then he began talking about the injuries to her spine and noting that he said anything above like the C3 in your neck, up to your base of your head, any fracture between the C3 and whatnot, Lindsay fractured her C1, that's going to affect her ability to breathe. So that was probably a good indication of why she had to be incubated, because she was needing help breathing. There was a question that Kevin Reddington had asked him where the prosecution continuously objected. So the judge asked for a sidebar, and instead of going to a sidebar, Kevin Reddington just kind of impatiently said that he didn't have any other questions and flippantly kind of walked away.
With people in the emergency room and treating people that have been involved with sequential acts of self-harm, do you have an opinion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty as an emergency board certified physician as to the effect of the combination of the multiple sequential injuries that you saw?
Objection.
Can I see counsel at sidebar? I'm just.
I can withdraw it, Judge. I'll withdraw it. Just thank you very much.
So that was a recap of day 14. The defense's case began, and tomorrow we'll hear more of the defense's case on day 15. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of You Would Think. And please like and subscribe. Put any comments or questions in the comment section. And I hope you have a great rest of your night.